crazy. That's crazy. It was behind me this whole time. Good. Focus. Okay. This should be good. This should be great. I look delectable. Wow. Welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Veronica, and today we're going to get a little bit transparent and get into my spiritual journey. So in my last video, I kind of was talking about how I am on this journey to self-discovery and figuring myself out and who I am within so that I can reach my purpose in a sense. So I thought, let's kind of dive into my spiritual journey. And at first I wasn't going to film this video because I was like, who needs one more spiritual journey video? Like, there's thousands on YouTube, like everybody's talking about it now. It's a thing all over the place, and it's been on my mind. So I'm kind of in a space now also where I'm trying not to ignore my intuition. And usually when something is sitting in my mind or sitting, with me for a long period of time, that usually means that I need to do it. And I've learned my lesson about, ignoring my intuition and not following through with it many times. But ever since I've been on kind of like this journey, I have gotten to the point where I now know the difference between my intuition and my anxiety. And now I know when to listen to it and when not, when it's really not my intuition, it's just me feeling anxious. Also, before we begin, if this is something that you are not into and you are on a different journey of your own, whether that be religious or anything like that, and this is not something that you agree with, you can just click off the video. This is my journey and my journey alone. It's a journey for a reason. So I'm here to share it, and I hope those who are experiencing similar, in a similar situation, or I've experienced this, they can kind of relate, and it can probably help someone or spark a conversation. It is not an easy or simple journey, and it does get rough, and yeah, I just wanted to make this video. So let's get right into it. I don't believe I started my spiritual journey last year or a couple years ago. I know that I started my spiritual journey since I was a kid. I did not grow up in a religious household. Neither of my parents are religious. My mom, she does more spiritual practices. That's what I grew up seeing. And my dad, he kind of like did his own thing. But there were still bits and pieces of Christianity in my upbringing, but I was never like brought up in the church or anything like that. So when I say there was bits of pieces of Christianity in my upbringing, there was always a Bible in my home. My dad always told me to pray, always told me to, list out the things that I'm grateful for and be thankful, and all those things kind of from like my parents' upbringing, because they grew up in the church. My dad, he is from Jamaica, so a lot of Caribbean people are very religious and very into the church. And my mom, her family is from the South, and so she also grew up in the church, but me and my siblings did not grow up in the church. Okay, so pause, because I kind of lied. So my older siblings, they did go to church. I don't know how frequently. And the pre-K that I went to when I was a kid was a Christian-based pre-K, and the only reason why I just remember this is because of the childhood photos that I have. So outside of like the pre-K, I don't remember going to a church or having a church home, and I don't remember when any of like that ended, because for the rest of my childhood we did not go to church, and I didn't step foot into a church again, I guess, until I was in high school when I chose to go to church. So maybe I did understand what a Bible was because of that. But yeah. So when I was younger, like I said, there was always a Bible in my home. And I remember as a kid, out of curiosity, I would always read the Bible and I would try to understand it. It was never really explained to me. The Christian faith was never really explained to me, but I knew what a Bible was, probably from like television or something like that, or hearing it from like people around me, and I knew that it was linked to a certain practice. So I would read it and I would pray and I would, kind of sort of try to find a connection between me and God. So as a kid, I always knew that there was something greater out there who was watching over us, and who was protecting us. And so ever since then, I have been trying to find like this connection. And it wasn't until high school when I made this decision to go to church. And of course, like, my parents were a bit like, skeptical, had their views about the church, because I don't know what they experienced in the church, but they just had their views on like all of that. And so like my dad, he would take me to church and he would just be like, when I first wanted to go, he kind of gave me a talk, and he was just like, look, like, when you go in there, he's like, make sure that you are, keeping an open mind and you're not taking everything for what it is. And of course, me being the person that I am, like, I'm always questioning things, I'm always curious about things, and so that was not gonna happen. So he was just saying, like, don't just think because it's the pastor or like a person of authority that you have to take whatever they say as is. You need to think for yourself, and you need to develop your own opinions and your thoughts on everything. And it was just one of those things, because he didn't, like I said, I don't know what my parents went through growing up in the church, but he just didn't want me to get hurt. And so I went to church for 4 years, and the first year, I was into it, and I liked the church that I went to. It was a non-denominational church, so it wasn't like a traditional, like Pentecostal or Baptist or anything like that. It was accepting of everyone, from all walks of life, and I just really liked being there, and I liked volunteering, and I liked the people that I met, and they're still amazing people and they're still great people, but after probably like the third year, I don't know why it took so long, but it did, I was kind of just like, I don't really feel that connection that everybody usually talks about when they talk about their faith. And whenever I would ask questions, like I said, I'm a curious person and I'm always the type of person to ask questions, I would get these answers that just didn't make sense. And I was trying to make sense of a lot of things, and the fact that a lot of things weren't making sense to me was kind of just like, I don't know. And this is not, I'm not in no way like bashing the Christian faith or anything like that. Like, if you do practice that, there's nothing wrong with that. But for my spiritual journey, I just didn't really click with it. Not saying that it's bad or anything like that, but there's just a lot of things that I read in the Bible and a lot of things that were said in church and from people in the church that I just did not agree with. And I just, so after like the 4th year or so, I stopped going to church. Like, I started going like sporadically, and then I stopped overall, and I was still reading the Bible on my own, and I was still watching sermons online from like other churches, but after a while I was just like, this isn't it, like, this can't be it. And I stopped overall. Like, there were moments where I would still read the Bible and stuff, but after a while I had stopped overall. And like for about a year, I wasn't doing anything but praying, and like I was still journaling, still writing things that I was grateful for and journaling, and like kind of like going through that process, practices that I was doing while I was in the church, that kind of brought me closer spiritually. And so I just kept doing that, and then I kind of had this moment where I was kind of like going back to my childhood and remembering like all the things that I saw my mom doing, with her practices. And then my sister, my younger sister, she was into like a lot of spiritual things, and this was like when I was in undergrad, so I was like a sophomore, junior. And my sister, she was into like crystals and astrology, and that's kind of like what I saw growing up. Like my mom was the first person to introduce me to astrology when I was a kid, and then after that it was like I saw her like smudging the house and all of these things that I just, always felt familiar to me for some odd reason. Like I just felt good. So I saw my little sister practicing what she was practicing, and at first I was a little skeptical as well, because I'm always skeptical before anything. Like that's just how I am as a person. About a year and two, and like I was out of church. I wasn't really like doing the things that I was doing. And then I remember after I graduated from undergrad, that was probably the worst time of my life because I was so depressed. I was going through post-grad blues, and I was just going through it. The only thing that I got out of bed for was to go to work. And then after a while, I kind of picked myself up out of it and got into a routine, and started working out and exercising and stuff like that. But I still felt lost, and I felt spiritually removed. That's the thing. Like I felt like I had no like connection or purpose, and I felt like that really took a toll on me. And during that time, when I was about to leave, the summer before I was about to leave for grad school, I started seeing angel numbers everywhere. And I already knew about like angel numbers and like, seeing those numbers meant something. I just never really looked deep into it. But the first number that I saw was the number 11. And then I started seeing 1111. And at first I was just like, what the hell is going on? And then eventually I was like, okay, I keep seeing this number everywhere I go. It doesn't matter what I do. I could be minding my business and I'll look to my left and see the number 11 or 1111 somewhere. Or there was one time where I had went to Walmart and my total came out to 1111, and I was just like, I think that was the moment where I was just like, all right, okay, like let me look this up. This is clearly something that I need to pay attention to. So I looked it up and I started, getting into angel numbers and like getting into signs and omens and all of those things, and like seeing that and realizing like I was still being watched over, even though I felt removed from religion, spirituality, and all of that stuff. That was kind of like my sign, like that I was still being protected, I was still being guided, I was still being watched over. And I feel like I'm about to cry, but I'm not about to cry because okay, hold on. That was a really tough time for me, and to see that that was a sign for me, kind of brought me back to getting back onto my spiritual journey. And so I didn't go back to church. I didn't go back to to religious practices, because like I said, like those things just didn't sit right with me, and I didn't agree and didn't want to be a part of something that I did not 1000% agree with. And so after that, I had been on my spiritual journey, just taking it slowly this time and not really forcing things to happen, or like getting frustrated when things aren't happening. So I just decided to let it be as it was, and just continue to keep my head up and do the things that I needed to do. So in 2020, last year, probably like everyone else, I had my spiritual awakening. And I always heard about like spiritual awakenings and like going through those things. I just didn't know how deep it was, because I didn't really know anyone who had went through something similar, but I went through it. When I tell you, I'm gonna just go into detail. So in 2020, like y'all know, everybody all over the world was going through it, and I was one of those people as well. All these things kept happening that kind of led up to my spiritual awakening, that I now realized was not a coincidence. It happened for a reason. So like in January, I got really, really sick, most likely from traveling back home for the holidays. and nobody could figure out what was wrong with me. And then I later found out that I had COVID, like once COVID kind of like made its way to the US, because in January nobody was really talking about COVID in the US. They were still talking about it like it was something overseas, and it was making its way to the US. So I got really, really sick, and I was sick until from January to March. But January was the worst that I was, to the point where I felt like I was about to die. Like, it was crazy to me because I don't even know how to explain it, but it was scary that I had went to the hospital and the doctors are like, we don't know what's wrong with you. Like, that made that caused so much anxiety. But yeah, so that was the first part. And then my roommate at the time, she was going through something in her personal life, and she ended up moving out. So I ended up, staying by myself. And around this time, it was about to be February, and I was starting to feel better, but I still had like a cold, like a lingering cold. So I had a cough and like all that stuff. So after that, like mid-February, no, I think the end of February, a guy that I was seeing, that ended. And around that time as well, I had started therapy. And I think the ending of that, of me, like the guy that I was seeing, kind of like it kind of like that was it. Like, I just broke down and I was just going through it. I don't know why. And I was by myself in a new city because I had moved for grad school, and I was in my apartment by myself, had started therapy. And even my therapist was scared. She was like, you don't have your family around you, you don't have any friends up here, like, are you sure you want to go through this? And I told her yes, because I had already tried to start therapy in undergrad and just never went through with it because I just didn't feel ready. And so I told her yes, like, I still want to go to therapy, because I felt that, going through all of this stuff, like, therapy would at least help me. But it also opened up a lot of like trauma from my childhood that I kind of had to like process through. And so that was rough. And that entire year, on top of like everything that was happening in the world, I was just going through this journey, this process, this spiritual awakening, and it was scary. I didn't know what I was going to do because I didn't really have anyone here with me physically, but I knew I was being watched over again because okay, we back. My nail had popped off. Yeah, it popped off. They're press-ons, but I wanted to make it through the video. So that entire time that I was going through all of that stuff, like, I cried myself to sleep for I don't know how long, but that during that time, like, I got another sign that I was being protected for I don't know how long it was. But when I first started going through everything, and every night when I would lay down to go to sleep, oh, the window is like, yeah, every night when I would lay down to go to sleep, I just felt like this warmth surrounding me. It kind of felt like someone was just hugging me as I was laying down and like covering me, and it felt so warm and so comforting, and I just didn't know what it was. I didn't know what it was until I got my first reading done, and my very first reading done. And the lady had told me, she was just like, you are heavily protected. And when I tell you, I got chills because I wasn't expecting that. Like, all my life growing up, I always felt like I was overlooked. Not me about to start crying again. Growing up, I always felt like I was kind of like overlooked, and nobody really like paid attention to me or like really cared about me. And I'm pretty sure like my family, of course, I don't want to be like, feel like I don't want to act like I'm over exaggerating. I'm pretty sure there are people that cared about me, but for some reason, like growing up, I always felt overlooked. And when she told me that, like, I just got chills, because I was just like, what? Like, me? Like, what do you mean I'm being heavily protected? And after that, like, my spiritual journey I kind of got closer spiritually. And I've been on this journey of like figuring myself out and self-discovery and all of these things that have kind of brought me closer to myself and to my higher self, and to God, the creator, spirit, whatever you want to call them. I just feel at peace. And there are moments where I do have rough times during this process, because it's just like you get frustrated and all of these things. But after 2020, I just feel like my spiritual journey has taken a different turn. And it's a journey for a reason, because never in a million years did I think that I would be where I am today, especially with all of the things that I've gone through mentally. But yeah, it's been rewarding and fascinating. Like, this stuff is really interesting to me. Like, I don't understand how all of this was kind of like removed from us and like kept from us and like shown as bad, and you can't do this and you can't do that, and this religion is better than this one and all that. I just feel like all of these things are set into place to help us get through life. This world and the people in it weren't created as a one size fits all, and that's kind of how I see life. And that's why I don't judge, I don't bash anyone for whatever, I just see them as like another human being trying to figure out whatever the hell it is that they need to figure out so that they can fulfill their purpose. And yeah, I'm gonna conclude it here. I don't know how long this video is, but if you made it to the end, I thank you. If this is something that you're interested in or you want to see more of, make sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe, because I will be coming back with more content. And I'm really excited. Like, I can't believe I wasn't about to make this video. Everything just flowed so well. But yeah, I will